Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a bit about Apollo today. How many people here have heard about Apollo?
How many of us heard about it earlier on?
How many of you who weren't in my earlier presentation heard about Apollo? So Apollo is a new runtime that Adobe is writing. It'll probably be released in some type of developer preview release in the next few months. I believe we're targeting first half of 2007. It'll be released as a final product, hopefully by the end of 2007. It's a new runtime. It's going to run across Windows and Macintosh, and it's going to allow developers to create applications that run across both platforms. It integrates both the Flash player as well as an HTML runtime. So we're using the WebKit engine that's currently in Safari, and you can actually see it in behind me on the screen. So I'm running an application here on my Mac. I could easily just be running the same application on Windows, and it's called Maptacular. And what Maptacular does is it reads a V card that we have on the local machine, populates a list that you currently can't see, but trust me, is there, and will populate a Google map. So it's actually hitting the Google Maps API and allowing us to view our cards in a map type environment, matching up a local file, the V card, along with an internet-based API, which in this case happens to be Google Maps. So let me just show it to you for a second. So what we've got here is, on the left-hand side, this is a Flex-based application. So you've got a Flex control, Flex slider that's sliding out with a Flex tree inside of it. It's actually reading in, like I said, a local file. I can show you the local file later if you want to see it. So the application is loading in a local file. That Flash is now overlaid on top of the HTML rendering engine, along with alpha transparency, as you can see. You can actually see right through it, right through to the HTML. If you want to, that HTML is actually its own control, so you can do all sorts of things like you can do in Flash. You can blur it out, you can spin it around, you can do everything you can do with just a regular Flash, with any Flash control. And when I drag and drop that V card, it's going to actually drag and drop from Flash over top of the HTML component. It's going to load in the HTML. And my luck, I've lost the internet connection with the wireless. But trust me, it works. Can somebody help me with my internet, please? Yeah?
Is Apollo like launched as a one-time executable, or is that in the player that you actually play content within?
Yeah. So the question is Apollo launched as a runtime, or is it a player, or what? We lost the internet. So we can get it back to the It's the last step really needs it. So what happens as an end user is the end user will install the Apollo runtime, and it'll be installed once, and you install Apollo applications. I can actually walk you through what it's going to look like from an end user perspective to install an Apollo application. From a developer's point of view, currently Apollo support is built into Flex Builder. I went through an earlier presentation today on how to actually create .air, which is an Adobe. Does anyone remember what it stood for? I get it mixed up all the time. Adobe Independent Runtime is what the .air file stands for, and you go through the steps to create it. It's really very easy. Essentially it's just a zip file with in a certain order. So the XML file that defines the application is first inside of that zip file, and then all the assets for the file for the application are next. So you have like a Swift file, maybe some HTML files or whatever, an icon probably, etc., etc. The user, any one of those, then just click on work and drag it over. Might have to restart it. That's all right. So actually, there's the .air file. Well, I'll walk you through what it looks like from an end user to install one. So if the end user downloads one of the AIR files, the installer is going to pop up. This is, again, pre-alpha release, right? So we're going to work on what the installer looks like and what the options are. They won't actually be grayed out when it goes live. So you'll be able to choose where you're going to install it, etc., etc. The end user will press continue. It'll get installed as an application either under Windows or Mac. So it'll get installed on the Mac. It gets installed to /home/applications. So the user, it's not installed as a root application. It's actually installed on a per user basis. And on Windows, it's installed as a regular application, I believe, for all the applications. I'm not sure what the Vista user management stuff is going to do to Apollo. But it'll get installed in start and add remove programs or start programs, etc. And that's all going to be transparent to the user. You won't have to understand it.
So the user would have to have administrator rights in order to install, no?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
So on corporate laptops that are locked down, they still be able to install this? Or is there
Well, the corporation will probably have some control over whether it's going to install the runtime or not. So I'm not. A lot of this stuff that I'm showing you really hasn't been defined. Like we're still working on the APIs for the file system, for instance, and a lot of the security stuff hasn't even been written or talked about yet. Well, it's probably been talked about, but it hasn't certainly been written. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. So as I said, Apollo can actually read the local file system directly. There's no need to upload files to the server now and then read them back in your application. In this case, we've got an MP3 application that will load or import your iTunes library, actually. And the neat thing I like about this application, is actually written by Mike Chambers, is it incorporates a bunch of stuff that you don't normally see in a regular like iTunes type environment. So it'll grab Almart, which you can do that on iTunes now. But it'll also grab lyrics from the Lyric Wiki. So it'll connect to the Lyric Wiki and download the lyrics from that, and it'll display them as an HTML web page right inside of your iTunes music player. It'll go to Flickr and it'll do a search at Flickr, either on the song title or on the artist name, and it'll pull in some imagery. So now you're actually mashing up your local music with stuff that's available on the internet. Yeah.
But it's not actually playing back through iTunes, right?
No, it's actually playing it directly.
So you
It's
read,
playing it like
you
through-
read in the iTunes library, and then it
Just
goes
one.
and finds that MP3 file on your file system. and plays
Yes,
it.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the MP3 players that we've written as a sample application.
You said it plays images as well, so it's more than MP3.
Oh yeah, it's running Flash Player 9. So whatever Flash run, like you could write an application to go to YouTube and download the videos, search YouTube for videos and then play them right inside your Apollo application. Like it's just like you're running Flash Player, except you don't have the limitations of the browser. You're running with access to the file system. You're able to work offline. You can actually synchronize the data as well. Yeah.
But you're still restricted by the security settings about downloading other people's content, right?
The
Like the cross-domain policy. Like,
I'm not sure what they're going to do about the cross-domain policy. Actually,
because if
I'm
you're
not
running,
sure what the security model is going to be around that.
if you're running a flat in the Flash IDE, there is no cross-domain policy, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're planning to do with that. This is a very simple application, just a little file browser. It shows you a bunch of things. One, the fact that the window's transparent. Two, that it's actually reading in my local hard drive, so it's able to access the local hard drive directly. And the one that I am most proud of, because I've been working very closely with these guys, is a new eBay application that we've been working on. So if you go to Google and you do a Google search for Dimas, you'll actually come across some screenshots. Kevin Lynch was showing this at the Max conference this past year on a demo. We worked with the eBay guys to create this, and it's kind of they're actually going to be pursuing this and releasing this after Apollo is launching. So if you do a search, I've actually already done a search here for Xbox. You can see a bunch of things. One, I've got the results that have come back in the left-hand side here, just beside the search. And you've got the filters on the left-hand side, and then the search, and then the item, just like you would see on eBay. You've got the HTML, you've got everything about the seller, got an easy way to add your bid. I'm actually not going to bid because this is hitting the live production server. And then the HTML, all that you would find on a regular eBay webpage. So all the nice design that we're used to on eBay seller pages will stay with us, which is great. So you can do a whole bunch of things here. You can actually, instead of just adding items to your watch list, why don't we drag and drop items to a watch list? So watch when I'm adding this to the watch list here. You just take the item, and you can see that the watch list has actually been highlighted. It's telling me, hey, I'm actually allowed to drag and drop that onto the watch list. And that's hitting my actual watch list now on eBay. So if I were to go onto ebay.com, that item would actually show up on my watch list. And then you can remove it just as easily by just clicking off. And you can think about some certain scenarios, some certain use cases where eBay would really like this. So because we're getting access to the desktop, we can do things like Windows Toast messaging. So we can minimize the application, or dock messaging in OS 10. You can minimize the application, you can always have it running, and eBay can actually send messages to your application when you've been outbid on something. So a little notification can come up when you're getting close to the end time saying, hey, you've just been outbid, do you want to rebid? And maybe you click yes, and it'll automatically send your bid back. The Flash player actually has the ability, I'm sure you guys all know this, but to push data out from the server. The client doesn't need to continually ping the server to find out if it's been outbid. When the outbid happens, the server will actually push the message out to the Flash client, in this case the Apollo client, and you can be notified in real time that you've been outbid and happening immediately. And you can think of a large company like eBay, and they've got tools already that'll do that for you, but it's pinging the server consistently to find out what's the latest bid, what's the latest bid. You can think about how many people are on eBay and how much money they're going to save by actually just pushing out the data as opposed to pinging the servers, right? Somebody did a calculation, it was up on Dig the other day. If you think about it, having a black Google web page as opposed to a white one was going to save the world like how many kilowatts of electricity. It was absolutely insane. And it's the same thing with Google, with eBay. Just a small little change like that could save these guys a whole ton of money on their bandwidth fees.
So is this using like Flex Data Services or something in the back end, or?
So the question is it using Flex Data Services in the back end? So it's currently not using FDS, although they could install FDS and get that push technology.
Right.
But you could also write your own push technology if you were to figure out the AMF format.
Right.
You could actually push the data. You could write it yourselves. It just comes down to a matter of do you want to save time and money by using FDS as opposed to writing your own push technology.
Yeah.
In eBay's case, they might be interested in having a different set of technology because FDS uses AMF. If they wanted a non-Flash client to also be able to use that same push technology, they might decide to write their own version of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do these applications get distributed? Are they a Windows exe?
No, so they are a .air file.
Pardon me?
A .air file. So the extension is .air, and you can email that file to somebody. You can put it up on your web page, just like any other file that you would find. When the user gets it, it'll run an installation process, and it'll walk them through installing that Apollo runtime. If they don't have the runtime, I believe you'll be able to package the runtime along with the AIR file in a single distribution that'll give them both. Once they've got the runtime, then that's it. They just install AIR files just like going to regular web page. Yeah.
I'm wondering how robust is the HTML rendering inside of the HTML render component going to be? Is that going to support all kinds of styling and JavaScript as well?
They're going to turn off plugin support. I know that one for sure. I'm not sure exactly how far, how many components they're going to support. I think they're going to support all the various form components that you can get in HTML. Apart from that, I really can't say. It's sort of, this is really Literally, the HTML rendering engine went in like less than a month ago. Yeah.
When you say you turn off plugin support, does that include Swift files?
I believe that does include Swift files. And the reason why I say that is because you'll be able to actually create the Swift around that HTML. So the idea with Apollo is not to be creating a HTML application that embeds Swift. Well, actually, maybe you can do that. So I'm not sure if they're going to allow you to include Swift or not. I know.
Like, what about if you're including a website that has Flash navigation in it? What's going to happen there?
Well, see, the idea is not to include websites. Like, you don't want to be building a web browser with Apollo. This is for very targeted applications that you're building. And so, if you were thinking about it from a website point of view, Apollo is not really the solution for a website. It's really for a web application. Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at your example that's on the screen right now, that's a web page that would be the same as I would see in Firefox, right?
Not quite, because you don't have the navigation for eBay, for instance.
Sorry, the web page inside the Apollo application.
Yeah.
But it's only a part of it, not the whole
It's
site,
only data.
right?
It's just
It's-
information.
From an eBay perspective, that's not a web page. That's
Oh,
a
okay.
description of the item that you're purchasing on eBay. So it's a bit of a difference. On the web, it happens to be rendered inside of a web page, but it's to eBay, it's just simple data. Now you can follow the link. So if this guy's got a link to his power seller store or whatever,
Right.
and you follow it, it'll actually continue to follow it. And I'm not sure if the developers are going to be able to, for instance, stop that from happening. You probably don't want people browsing the web inside of an eBay Apollo application. To me, it doesn't make sense. But I'm not sure if they're going to restrict that or not. Yeah.
Will there be a local database API? So if I don't want to go through a server, I want to go directly through database files?
So the question is there going to be a local database API? The question, or the answer to that, I believe, is no initially. But you will be able to store objects directly onto the file system. So I don't believe they're going to be embedding some type of SQL-like database or anything like that. But you can save native ActionScript objects directly to the file system.
You can cut me off at any time, but is there, I mean,
It's brand new, right? Everyone's got questions.
follow up to that, like, can you call other applications? Like, can you execute a application like, I don't know, calculator or
Yeah.
notepad or something?
So I don't believe you'll be able to do inter-application communication with this.
But even launching something.
I don't think so.
Okay, so you can do it right.
No, you're not launching iTunes, you're reading in the iTunes library. So you're not launching iTunes, you're just reading in the XML file that iTunes used to store its songs. Yep.
So what's the advance over Java? Is that pretty threatening?
What's the advance over Java? Well, to be honest with you, there's quite a few advances over Java. So you've got a bunch of APIs that we're writing for Apollo, including data synchronization APIs, the ability to work offline, the ability to access the local file system. There's a whole set of APIs that we're writing for the Apollo framework. The fact that it looks better is certainly a huge advantage over Java. The fact that one of the core competencies for Adobe is to distribute software to large numbers of people. And it's a fairly good bet that the runtime will get distributed very, very quickly to a large number of people. So Flash Player, for instance, is on many more desktops than the Java runtime is. And if you're looking to build an application, you're better off building it for Flash Player right now than you are for Java. And hopefully the same thing's going to happen with Apollo.
You know how big the runtime is?
The runtime is about 4 to 5 megabytes. I think they're trying to keep it under 5 megs. So you're looking at the 1 to 2 megs for Flash Player. You're looking at this Safari WebKit engine on top of that, which I think runs at about a meg or 2 again, and some additional APIs for installation. You're looking probably about 5 megs.
Do you know if there's any plans for an extensible architecture? Allowing a corrector, for example, allows extras to be plugged into it for third-party developers to extend the feature sets. Is there anything developing that for Apollo?
I'm not really sure what the plans are for that. Mike Chambers would be a good one to ask that, maybe on the blog or the FAQ. Yeah, I'll leave it at Mike to answer that. Yeah.
How cross-platform is it, including Macs and non-Intel, like Mac ARM?
So I don't believe it's going to work on. I believe it's a universal binary currently. So it's running on Intel and PowerPC based Macs. It is currently not scheduled for 1.0 to run on Linux, but Linux is in the future plans. Supporting Linux at this point, they started development before FlashInTO 9 was actually available on Linux. So it would have been a lot of extra work to actually get all 3 platforms running. And since it's something new that we're still unsure about whether it's going to be successful or not, to get it out fast, we wanted to just limit it to Windows and Macintosh.
Right. So the same AIR file?
Same AIR file, exactly the same.
And do you see any instances where you need to detect if Mac, if Windows do this?
Not really.
Nice.
You were saying earlier, Mike, that you would install like a different runtime on a Mac than you were on a PC, but the AIR itself would be identical.
Yeah, the runtime is platform specific, just like Flash Player is platform specific. Yep. So with that, I just wanted to show you one more thing from the Apollo application, or from the eBay app.
Besides eBay, what other companies would benefit or would benefit to access them?
Well, eBay works really well for Apollo because of the timeliness related to the auctions that are going on. So, well, so not necessarily, well, I mean, every online seller, I think it appeals to them in the fact that when you're in an Apollo application, you can't go to another website. So one of the biggest problems from going from website to website is it's so easy to go from website to website. And if you're selling something to people, you can easily just go to another website and find a cheaper price. So having an application that gets installed locally appeals to a lot of web companies or websites because it makes it easier for people to buy from you, and it stops you from being able to easily go to another website. I mean, you can launch a browser, but it's inherently more difficult than typing into a URL bar.
So wouldn't that stop people from using it?
So wouldn't that stop people from using it? Well, people will use whatever gives them the best user experience, right? And if this is providing a much better user experience for eBay than it is from going online, and you can save people time by making it easier for them to sell things or to buy things, then the belief is that they'll actually be using whatever tool is most easy for them to use. Yep.
The launch speed at least is pretty fast, so it'll be equivalent to like a standard executable.
So the eBay application is about I believe the size of it is about a 2 megabyte application, this one that we're seeing here. You have to remember that a lot of the logic for the applications is still stored on the server.
Right.
So in this case, it's a fairly light framework. We're looking at the display mechanism for eBay itself.
So would this launch faster than say launching a web browser?
Well, that's all. My web browsers are running pretty fast. But I mean, it's all relative, right? Like, what's the speed of your computer? How much memory do you have?
Because usually an executable will start up much faster than say launching a page into a browser.
Right, we have to launch the browser and then launch the web page on top of that.
Right. So is this going to be the same sort of thing again?
Well, it's launching at Flash 9 runtimes, right? So Flash 9's got a just-in-time compiler on it, and it's launching extremely quickly. I can start up eBay if you
local
want.
content that's not accessing the server then should be very, very quick.
Should be extremely fast. I mean, you
There's
get
still
some
no
link.
database API.
Yeah, and you're probably going to be faster accessing the data here too because you're not downloading the display mechanism. If you're using something like AMF and using a binary protocol to transfer the data back and forth,
Right.
I mean that's going to be extremely quick. It's going to be way faster than downloading each. Yeah.
I'm going to ask about the, like you mentioned that it's easier to keep people on, if it's a separate application, right? But I mean, if you have the web browser and somebody can just type in the URL, rather than installing an application to have to look at a product, I mean, where's the balance there?
Well, I mean, it's up to the companies to decide what they want to do, right? Like, we're not forcing anybody to build an Apollo-only application.
No.
All I'm theorizing is that if you can actually get people to install your application, that you've got a competitive advantage over a company that decides to not make this available. Because if they're using your product because it's easier to get to, they just double click from the desktop or it's included on their dock, or et cetera, then inherently, since it's easier for them to get to your program, they're going to be using your website more often. That's all I'm saying. We're not saying that people should be doing that. I'm just theorizing that that's one of the advantages. I just wanted to show you one more thing. And it's if you're selling something and the so this was built by a company called Effective UI down in the States. And they were theorizing that if you're actually selling something on eBay, it's a bit of a pain currently to be taking pictures and uploading them to your server, uploading them to eBay servers. So they thought, why don't we just use the camera and then allow people to take webcam shots of whatever they're selling. So that's what you can do in the eBay application. You can just capture the items that you want to sell. Maybe we'll turn it that way.
That's also useful for the adult industry.
For Bluetooth.
Yeah, Bluetooth. Simon!
What if you want to update your app?
What if you want to update your application? So there will be, I believe there will be APIs for automatically updating the application. Flash Player currently has the ability, I'm sure as most of you know, to automatically push updates through itself from Adobe.com. And we're going to utilize that, I believe we're going to utilize that same technology for Apollo. So you'll be able to push out updates directly to the user when they launch it. So if they're not connected to the net, they'll be using the older version. They'll still be able to access their data. When they connect, you can check to see if they've got the latest version. If they don't, it'll transparently download it to the user and install it, and then they'll be running it. If you're familiar with, if you want to be familiar with what Apollo is going to be like, I suggest you download something called Adobe Digital Editions, which is currently available on labs.adobe.com. It's a way of reading PDF ebooks. It's not built on Apollo, but it's got the similar type of experience that you're going to be seeing with Apollo. So it gets installed from the Flash Player auto update, that push technology in Flash Player. That's how it gets installed to your local machine, and it updates itself automatically when you're running it. It's not running on Apollo right now, but it's the same user experience that you're going to be looking at. So it's called Adobe Digital Editions on labs.adobe.com. I think we have to go. But I'll be around, so if you've got any questions about Adobe, about Apollo, about Flex Builder, you want to see what the next version of Photoshop or Flash is going to be like, I've got them all running on my laptop, so yeah.
Well, there goes my presentation. Well, I'll be running it in the new version of Flash, don't worry.
I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. So, probably